Trent. I'm down here at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where it's slightly warmer where you are. I think it's about it's going to be 82 today. I think you're going to see 22 if I saw correctly. So hopefully everyone's bundled up. You know, I work in the technology transfer office, and so what we do is we take innovations and inventions and things that NASA develops for very difficult missions to send humans out to the solar system, or James Webb or Hubble telescope, those types of sensors or algorithms, and we turn them into what we call spin-offs. And I don't know if the audience is aware of, but NASA publishes spin-offs every year in a book. This year it was an electronic book. We didn't print it. And one of the spin-offs that every one of you has in your pocket or on your table right now is your phone. If your phone has a camera, that camera has a CMOS sensor in it, and that CMOS sensor was first developed at JPL, and it was licensed out. And so every one of you has a NASA technology in your smartphone. Another one that folks are pretty knowledgeable about is temper foam. This is the memory foam that if you have a modern mattress, maybe it's a memory foam that cools you for some time, or you have a memory foam pillow. But that was developed with NASA money out of Ames for aircraft for shock absorption for safety. So that one kind of makes sense. But a lot of times the NASA spinoffs are really wildly different than the intended use. For instance, a algorithm that was developed for the Hubble Space Telescope using it's called the Groth algorithm. It really is kind of triangulates all the different points, the stars and the galaxies, and it helps to map them so you know where you're looking and all that. Well, someone figured out, says, hey, I'm trying to track whale sharks. I wonder if that might work for this. Reached out to the NASA folks, and with a few tweaks, an algorithm that was developed to look out to the universe and map galaxies and stars is used back here at home in the ocean to track whale sharks. And as a matter of fact, I learned that they also use it to track polar bears, because polar bear whisker patterns are unique. So, I can guarantee you the folks at Goddard never thought that, this Hubble algorithm would potentially be used to track whale sharks. And that's really why I enjoy talking to audiences like yourself, because it's these surprising uses for some of these technologies that are so fun. And, you might have the next spinoff 2026. All of our inventions and technologies are housed in one spot. It's technology.nasa.gov. If you can't remember that, you can just search NASA technology, and typically it will pop up. There's a number of categories that you can look in. You can search it. Our search algorithm is not as powerful as others, so I typically do 1 or 2 keyword searches. But you can find things, for manufacturing, environmental aspects, communications. So it really, there's more than 1,000 technologies housed in that one portal. You can also find software. All the software in our software portal is free of charge. You have to license it, because sometimes there are rules associated with the software package that you're going to agree to follow. But essentially, you can search similar categories. There's autonomous systems, there's power, there's materials and processes, environmental science, and again, similar search functionality. But all the software in the software portal is free of charge. There's no charge to use it, but you do have to license it. So regarding those technologies in the patent portfolio, the way that companies and academia even license it is there's 3 different types of licenses. If you just sort of want to test it out and see if it might work for your intended application, we have something called an evaluation license. That's a non-exclusive license. It does not allow you to make sales. It only allows you to sort of kick the tires, test it, and see if it will work. They're low cost and typically about 12 months. So that's, and they're fairly simple to get regarding applying. You just sort of need to give us a test plan and your intended market and a couple other details. We have something called a startup license, but I like to talk about that last. We have commercial licenses. These are your standard licenses that allow companies and entities to make sales using that technology, whether it's standalone or part of a system. And we at NASA really want to get these technologies broadly out So we tend to go with non-exclusive licenses, but there are cases where companies need some partial exclusivity or exclusivity. The cost goes up for those types of licenses, but and there are a number of U.S. code regulations that one needs to meet in order to get that, but they're not impossible. But typically, NASA, we like to get things broadly out to maximize the taxpayer investment in the technology. So not exclusive is our starting position. The last one is startup license. This is kind of cool. We have been focused lately trying to connect with entrepreneurs in the different ecosystems. And we know that startup businesses don't have a lot of money. Sometimes they're self-funded. They got seed funding or, they have minimal money. And it just doesn't make sense to say, hey, yeah, license our technology. This is great. And give us money when they need it most. So the startup license is cool. It's non-exclusive. It's commercial. And it kind of kicks those royalties down the road for about 3 years. So there's no minimum fees for the first 3 years. And then it's, I think, about a 4 1/4 running royalty rate afterwards. So it's a nice generous license for startup businesses. We try to make it simple at NASA to license our technologies. It's all housed in the technology portal. Literally, if you go click on one, a technology opportunity sheet comes up. It's like a 2-page sheet that gives you some general information on it. If the patent is issued, there's a link to the patent so you can learn more about the technology. And then you can apply or ask questions. There's a link at the top right. You provide us the information in the application. We set the terms, negotiate the terms, and then folks sign it. And then you have a NASA technology that you can use for business development or as part of your system. As I mentioned, we've been focused on entrepreneurs, and that focus is kind of managed out of our Technology Transfer Expansion Program. That's T2X. And this is where we are connecting with incubators and entrepreneurs and universities to make sure that they know that these technologies exist and see if they might be useful for them. And as part of that, we do have something called Technology Transfer University, where entrepreneurship programs, business programs can use the technology portal and allow the students to build business model canvas, business models around a real technology, real NASA technology. And typically what we'll do is we'll work with the professor. We'll give a presentation, not too much unlike what you're seeing now, and talk to the students about the portal, how to find the different technologies. And then we engage with the class a little bit to answer some questions. And then at the end, it's really exciting to find out what the different teams come up with at the end, because oftentimes they find markets that maybe we didn't know about. It's one of actually the joys that I get to do is interact with the professors and students, and essentially they're learning from NASA technologies and we're learning from them. Mike is going to talk about SBIR, STTR. I always talk it because it's we're kind of on the same coin. He's on the other side, right? I have NASA technologies in the portal that I want to make sure everyone knows about. Mike on the flip side has said, hey, we have technologies that we need for our NASA missions, and you can propose and get money to do that. So I always love talking about SBIR, STTR with Mike and our audiences. Other ways that you can engage with NASA, we have something called the Centennial Challenge. Many of you probably already know about the Deep Space Food Challenge. I think phase 2 is coming up. Ralph is on later this afternoon. He's been intimately involved with that. We have NASA Break the Ice Challengers, all these different challenges that folks can win prize money based on our NASA needs, right? These are challenges that we have that we're looking for creative ideas. You can't talk to any academic institution without talking about how can you propose to our research announcements. This is where you find it. If you search NASA Inspires, this should be one of the top selections here. And so this is how you find all of our calls for proposals. So Inspires is where you find it. Whenever I talk agriculture, I was the veggie project manager for several years. So I talked plant science, space crop production with Ralph and the team. And when we talk to agriculture folks, I remind them, said, hey, NASA has this huge database of remote sensing data. Some of it's near real time rather. And you can go back in the archive. I got lost you just go to Earth, what is it, Earth Data, NASA, earthdata.nasa.gov. And there's just tons of data. So for farmers who are wondering how things are looking, you can make use of this data, or universities can make use of this data and provide value back, perhaps. I know that there's some apps that have recently come out that are using some of this data. They're running some algorithms and trying to help farmers figure out when they should irrigate. Finally, can't talk to any academic institution without also talking about internships. We have 10 NASA centers all across the country, and we all do a little bit of different types of research, but we definitely always need talented folks from all academic backgrounds, really. At NASA, we have writers, we have public affairs specialists, we have legislative affairs specialists, we have business development folks, accountants, and scientists and engineers. It really takes everyone to get these missions off the ground. And really, that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm Trent. Mike's going to get audio soon, I hope, and we'll be able to answer all your questions. And I'm going to stop sharing and see what can I do.
Hey Trent, it looks like we got the senator back. So are you able to exclusively announce that NASA is going to be opening up their North Dakota headquarters here soon? Is that something that
I'm going to leave that to Mike.
Okay. Well, great. I think we do have some questions that I would love to dive into, but maybe we can now turn it over to Senator Cramer. Hopefully we got audio, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to talk about your vision for the state here, Senator.
Well, thanks, and sorry about that. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
As I said, I'm stranded for 3 days in a blizzard in Bismarck, and I can't remember that happening since I was a kid. But it's got its upsides and its downsides. So I knew a bunch of innovators would figure out to just move forward. First of all, I have to say, I think what Trent just shared is exactly the vision for North Dakota. And I think what I've enjoyed as your senator, particularly somebody who's sort of captured the space portfolio, if you will, in the Senate, usually considered a warfighting domain in my world, but of course, being around a bunch of innovators and whizzes in agriculture and space and aerospace and cyber and all of those things, the opportunity to bring and introduce space to all of these other areas has been a real pleasure for me. The thing that I get to do is just sort of be the rainmaker, introduce the folks and the vision, and then let the smart people take it from there. And I'm going to be speaking, as you know, at lunch, and I'll go into more details about my recent trip to the Kennedy Space Center just last month. But let me just say, after that visit to you guys from NASA, and by the way, thanks for being here, Trent and Mike, and for sharing all of this valuable information with all these valuable people who are problem solvers. But I try to get down to Kennedy every couple of years, and my recent trip last month, I'm just going to tease it with this: I will never look at a nutrition-packed radish the same again after visiting the veggie farm. I mean, who knew? Who knew? Who thinks about stuff like that, right? Unless you're planning a trip to Mars. But anyway, I'm just so proud of everyone. I'm so proud of the folks at UND and NDSU. Here you have a great space school. You have two great engineering schools, a great crops institute, and a lot of smart, curious people, and of course, throw in Grand Farm and the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem that exists up and down the Red River Valley. And it's one of those, I don't want to say unsung heroes of innovation, because I think more and more people are starting to discover the incredible resources that we have at our institutions and in our communities and in the heads of all these smart people. But it's certainly getting to be more recognized, and it's always my honor to be able to introduce again the institutions of academia with private sector, with of course federal government and quasi-government entities And that's really, what you're fulfilling today. I really wish I could be there, to be honest. I was really looking forward to the trip up to Grand Forks. But again, I'll answer questions as best I can, most likely divert them to smart people, and then look forward to spending some time with you at lunch.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Senator. We would love to maybe kind of hold off any questions for a little bit with you, but I'd love to kind of dive in a little bit on what's happening in North Dakota. But maybe Trent, maybe I can kick off with the first question here. So, the thing that really stood out to me through your program was, there's a lot of technology that's available out there. Do you find that most are like, entrepreneurs, people looking to launch their own company, or are these, organizations that are taking NASA technology to solve problems that already exist?
Hey, thanks. I would offer we get a little bit of both. We go to conferences, we go to scientific conferences. We bring folks like, I think Christina Johnson's there, like Dr. Johnson. We bring them to conferences with us, so they can explain. So we, just like Senator Cramer said, hey, I'm going to bring some smart people with me so we can get some answers. And when you get the smart people talking together, they quickly identify, pain points that a company has, or maybe ideas that a company wanted to go forward with, but they weren't sure. And so, we get, medium-sized companies looking for business development opportunities. And then, at Kennedy, we have a lot of hydrogen. We have the big rocket. We do a lot of, launch vehicles servicing and spacecraft processing, which is, you're dealing with cryogens at that point. And so with a liquid hydrogen economy, right? So there's a lot of these burgeoning companies trying to break into that, using Department of Energy funds. So we get, larger and medium-sized companies looking for those opportunities. And then, entrepreneurs, I mean, they are, hey, I have this great idea. And I tell you what, some of these professors that teach entrepreneurship, I've never seen a more motivated group of folks. They love what they do. They love entrepreneurship. They love the students. And I'm telling you, we get it all. We get startup companies right out of universities sometimes, from the T2U program that I mentioned. There's a company called Sbir that came out. They've been in business for a few years now. I think they just got Class B funding, and they're going around the world, cleaning up the environment, pulling PCBs out of the environment using one of our technologies. And so to me, that's just so exciting. So that's a long answer to say, yeah, we do both.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to open up a space here. You can put, for those virtual, you can put your questions in the chat, or anybody in person here have any questions? Yeah.
Senator Cramer, looking out 5 to 10 years, how would you like to see the United States and the space economy as a whole evolve, and what would you see it like to grow into?
Sure. So what I would, if I'm going to be really selfish, the way I'd like to see it evolve is, evolve with North Dakota at the center of the universe. Because I do think that we are problem solvers. We deal with extremes in many respects. We're risk takers, the pioneering spirit. But how I'd like to see it evolve is, it is really the way it is evolving. And that is, it's largely private sector driven. And that's what's so special about Trent and Mike right now being with us and NASA. If you've never been to the Kennedy Space Center, any of you, you should make it a point to do it. For the people that are familiar with the Grand Sky Park there at the Grand Forks Air Force Base, and the innovators that created this incredible opportunity with this giant piece of concrete that was once landed and parked a whole bunch of bombers, great big bombers, B-52s and tankers. Now is a great big piece of cement that that is rarely used, mainly for testing and training on UAVs. So this grand sky concept, if you take that and apply it to space, you've got the Kennedy Space Center. And what that does is it fosters the relationship between government and the private sector, the need and the demand, the dollars and the ideas, and you put those two things together, and you've got the Kennedy Space Center. You've got things like the various labs. You've got obviously the big space companies that are taking our astronauts to the space station these days, and taking off and landing jets. I mean, or rockets. It's really quite remarkable. But that's how I see it taking off. That's how I see it evolving, is with the federal government and the demands and the needs, and frankly, the resources that only the federal government can provide, with the leadership and innovation of the private sector that sees the commercial opportunities. And I think it's, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that, but for the private sector, I'm not sure the Kennedy Space Center would be, what it is today. It might be condominiums. And I'm not talking about condominiums for SpaceX, or Lockheed Martin. I'm talking about condominiums for a retirement village. And so that's how I see it taking shape and see it advancing, is a real partnership between these private sector and the public sector, with academia in many respects being the bridge.
Yeah, I love that completely, Senator. And maybe Trent and Mike, maybe that would be a good segue, or can you guys talk about how you see that? Really, it's that it's the 3 Ps, right? The public-private partnerships between academia, industry, government.
Yeah, I could absolutely talk about that, because driving into the Space Center, you see there's this huge facility just outside the gate that Blue Origin built, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing that on their own, with their own investment. SpaceX with landing their boosters, that was a private partner. It was a Space Act agreement, a public-private agreement. And that was to get our astronauts back to space from Florida, right? And so I think we got SpaceX 4 coming up at the end of the month. That's the 4th mission. That's awesome. There's 4 private astronauts on space station right now. We have 11 crew on the space station. The photos are great, So, we have a commercial resupply right out of Wallops. Northrop Grumman flies Cygnus to resupply, send science up and commodities and all that, as well as out of Florida. So, and we're expanding these. We have commercial payload services to the moon that we're investing in, and landers that we're investing in. So, certainly without private industry building these systems with the help of NASA, we have technical interchange meetings to talk about what we've learned and what we're expecting and all that, but it's led in many cases by private industry.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Trent. Maybe that is a good segue to, we can turn it over to Mike if his technology is working. I'm not sure if NASA needs to invest in better technology for you, Mike, but we can turn it over to you.
We're batting 500 on NASA technology right now with this webinar, right?
Yeah. It'd be probably easier if you guys were broadcasting from the space station right now. Then.
Hey, they do all right. They do some really great webcasts from the space station.
Great. Well, we can see your screen, Mike, but we can't hear you yet.
You'll find no solace in knowing that what I ended up having to do is I had to unplug my very official, highly protected VPN
Can anybody hear me now?
laptop and plug in my personal one. So, who knows?
Can anybody hear me now?
And Mike, I can hear you, buddy.
Yep.
Okay, so doing a sound check, 1, 2, 3.
You were good.
Okay, now I'm gonna try muting my computer audio right here and see whether it's just.
And I don't think we hear you anymore, Mike.
Okay, so what's going on is now my computer audio is working, but my phone audio is muted. But if you guys can hear me, I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, we hear you.
Rock and roll.
All right. Okay, so can everybody see the title screen on the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Hey, all right. Nope, this is kind of working. Hi, everybody. Sorry I didn't get to do a proper introduction earlier. My name is Mike Vinge, and my office is right next to Trent's in the Space Station Processing Facility down at Kennedy Space Center. Like a lot of folks today, we've all been working remotely for the last couple of years and stuff, but we're starting to filter back in and be a regular presence at the Space Center. I wanted to touch really quickly on what the Senator and Trent were talking about with regards to commercialization. I think the most concise way of saying what NASA is doing from this point forward is that what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to work the issues for which there is no closing business case. Most businesses, when they're thinking about doing some new endeavor, it's usually about trying to do a return on investment, and they usually have a plan to return on investment within a few years. So you put some effort into building a factory or whatever. That factory is going to be making you some money within a few years. That type of return on investment is something you typically see within any industry, and space industry is no different. What's been great is that there's been more and more opportunities for making profits in space, and so there are return on investments for lots of different types of business plans and more every single day. But you contrast that to some issues out in space where there might not be that solid of a return on investment right away. Like, for example, let's take space debris or things like that. You can see how having a government player involved to work on those non-lucrative issues can really benefit everybody. But by the same token, you don't want the government mixed into working business that a private company can take care of. Another good example of that is for all the effort that it's taken mankind to figure out how to get off the planet and get into space. That's been 30, 40, 50 years of a lot of hard work from a lot of different companies, and SpaceX right now is really showing a great optimized strategy for how to get up there at low cost, and that's perfect. It's great for us for the government perspective, because now we have industry able to provide that capability for us. We get to move more into doing deep space things, which is where we've always been wanting to go. We always want to keep exploring further out. So being able to get from the surface of the Earth up into orbit by using completely commercial means and different commercial providers is fantastic. It's one big chunk of the problem solved. Now let's go solve some more problems. So that's how NASA and industry keep working together. If you get a chance to tour Kennedy Space Center and you look at the Saturn V Center, one of the things you're going to see in the mock-up of the firing room is on the back of all the different chairs in the firing room is actually the jackets that the different contractors wore. And so you'll see McDonnell Douglas jackets, you'll see Boeing jackets, you'll see all sorts of different companies that were all the contributors. So it's really a combined team. Carrying on. And just want to do one more sound check. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about this specific program. As Trent was explaining, we have efforts where the technology created inside NASA can be licensed and used in the business setting, and that's what Trent specializes on with the technology transfer. Small business innovation research goes the other direction. We've actually got separate funding from the government to seek out small businesses and try to get their help to solve some of our biggest challenges. And it's a pretty big effort. So NASA's SBIR program, we're putting out a little over $200 million a year. So it's getting close to $4 billion total so far. And we work with a lot of different people in just about every single state that we can find. SBIR and STTR, you'll kind of hear these bounced up against each other. Basically, they're two programs that are run almost identically. The only difference between the two programs is that if you're getting a contract from SBIR, you can do it by yourself as a small business. But if you're getting a contract through STTR, that means you have to have a research institute like a university as a partner to do the work. You can't do it completely by yourself. So that's the only difference between the two. STTR, you can still go after it as a small business, but you need to have a research partner. And the SBIR, STTR programs are something that you see in many different federal agencies. So if you don't find something for NASA, there's really good chance you can check with one of the other federal agencies that runs the SBIR, their own SBIR programs. In fact, NASA isn't even the highest dollar value. I think we're third in terms of how much is spent. So we do touch a lot of people. There's for the average yearly input cycle, like this is an example of the stats from last year. Off of the phase 1 review, we had 365 proposals that got awarded. And so that's 365 potentially new companies interacting with NASA each year. And also, I want to point out that technology that we're needing from small businesses is not something that's abstract or technology just gets put up on a shelf. That technology goes directly into some of our more critical missions. Here's an example here where the Perseverance rover that's on Mars right now, we just start to identify a few of the different small businesses that provided critical components for those rovers. So we are literally pulling your stuff into the flight hardware programs and getting them up there because we need them. Now, what are we looking for when we're talking about our search for small businesses? First off, the type of business we're really aiming for is a business that is producing some kind of product. In general, if you're a service-oriented company, that's not really what the SBIR program is aiming for. We're trying to find somebody that is, the one way I say it is that if you are a company that has built or modified some of your own products in the past, then you might be capable of doing SBIR work. Basically, we're looking for people or teams that have creative new solutions to some of the problems that we have. The research institutes that we ask some of the companies to partner with, those those can pretty much be any research institute across the whole country. There's pretty wide allowance for how those work. And then, as I said earlier, by all means, if it seems like the opportunities inside the NASA SBIR program aren't quite the right fit, I would really encourage you to look at all the different agencies that offer it. All right, so now why would you go through this effort? Well, one of the things is this is a really good front door for small businesses and startups to start interacting with a government agency like NASA. And it is a good chunk of funding that we can provide to a company so that they can develop their tech. It's $1.15 million for the first parts of it. And then after you've made some progress, we have a way of adding more funds by leveraging funding into the program towards the end of your development. Another important point is that we take zero equity. So that's really, really important. So intellectual property, getting back to what Trent does, in that case, the NASA intellectual property is getting transferred out to companies to be able to commercialize and make profit off of. In this case, we have a problem. We need your help to solve the problem. But once we've paid for you to develop that technology, you get to keep the intellectual property that is associated with it. NASA just wants to be able to use it for government use. As long as we can do that, we're happy. And then the last part about this is whatever technology you're working on, particularly space related, by being involved in the SBIR program, you are working with some of our different teams, particularly each company has a point of contact, something of a mentor to help coordinate the development. So it's something that should be able to help both teams. Now, in terms of the research institutes, I'd like to, particularly in this forum, I'd like to emphasize that research institutes have a role to play for SBIR and STTR work too. And one of the things is that research institutes, like universities in general, can be a really good focal point for companies to come and get help in developing some of these different proposals. And so although the push is to have small businesses apply, we are definitely interested in speaking to universities to increase their participation in the SBIR and STTR programs. Now, this is the basics of how it works. There's several phases. Phase one is your first proposal that you'll submit to the SBIR program. And essentially what happens, we put out a solicitation that describes the problems, and in your phase one proposal is your approach to developing technology to solve that problem. It is not meant to be the place where you really do all the work inclusively. It's really more meant to be the first part of the effort where you are verifying and validating your approach and knocking down any particular big issues to see whether or not the extended development would be possible. At the end of phase one, you are invited to submit a phase two proposal. And the phase two proposal is much more involved. It's 2 years versus a shorter duration for the phase one. And that's really where the tech development happens, is inside the phase two itself. This year, we've increased the amount for phase twos up to $1 million. It was $750K before. And as you are working your way through that and the tech development is starting to proceed to a point where its future applications can get more understood, that's where we start to have the opportunity to throw more money at it by doing what we call post-phase two opportunities. The post-phase 2 opportunities are essentially situations where if we can find a customer out there who's interested in the tech and they put in a little bit of the money, we will add to their money and leverage a larger amount. So basically, this is a bit of a system where we can get customers, being NASA programs, government users, or even commercial users, to help pull the technology further through the development. We'll provide some of the funding, but we need some funding from the customer as well. So those post-phase 2 opportunities are pretty substantial too. As you see, the one on the far right, you could get up to $2.5 million off of that for 2 years worth of work. How you can find out about this program or dig into it, see if it's applicable to you, we have a website, just like all programs. And if you go to Google or something like that, type in NASA SBIR, you'll get to the site. And the biggest, quickest way to take a look and see if you personally have an opportunity is to go to the solicitation tab on the top, pull down last year's solicitation, the most current solicitation you can, and do a keyword search inside that document using the keywords that best suit your particular technology. There's over 105, 110 different research proposals or research questions that we need proposals for in the solicitation. So you'd be pretty surprised at how much depth there is. And just to give you a quick example, here are some of the major areas that are included inside the solicitation. Kennedy Space Center is the lead, for example, for FA-16 on the second column, ground and launch processing. That's what we're experts at. And we're also doing a lot of work with robotic systems, FA-4, as well as life support and habitation systems and ISRU. But each of the different centers may have some particular area that their specialty is for. And that's something else I'd want to emphasize is although you may find that you're interested in a particular subject, it might turn out that that particular NASA group is actually located some other part of the country or somewhere far away. So we really aren't geographically aligned in terms of our subject area. So don't be surprised if you're working with several folks from different centers. And I think this next part I'm going to talk a little bit more about in the afternoon part, but just to cover it very briefly, one of the important things about technology for space is to do relevant testing, to go and try to figure out how you can go and check out this technology to see whether or not it's going to work in space and to find out what sort of problems you have so that you can improve it. And a lot of times that's really critical because up in space, it's so hard to deal with a failure for components once they're actually in space that we really want to do substantial testing ahead of time. So this sort of testing in relevant environments is something I'll be touching a little bit more as we talk a little bit later today. But I do want to stop here for a second and just give you an example of some of the different things that have happened to companies inside the SBIR program. This company here, Astrobotic. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Mike.
It's amazing. Yeah, please.
Sorry, I'm not sure. It looks like we're still just showing the first slide. Not sure if your computer froze or.
Oh, you're kidding me. Yeah, I've been going through slides the whole time.
No.
Well, the audio's been good though. I've been able to follow along, but maybe that's because I know SBIR. But
well, that's good to know. I've been paging through on my screen, assuming that you guys were seeing each particular graphic.
Well, here, how about I can, if you stop sharing your screen or you're able to, I can pull up the slide deck and share my screen.
Let's do that. And I'd like to focus on what would be slide 9. That's the one with the different phases, just to make sure everybody's got a chance to see that. That's probably the most important one.
Sounds good. There we go.
All right. And let me see if I'm... Okay, well, great. So now I can actually watch the presentation, see what the slides are. It's even better. Okay, yeah, so this was when I was describing the different phases for the program, this is the meat of it here. The phase 1 and phase 2 is your 2 different areas where you put in a proposal. One thing I didn't talk about, you see phase 3 over there on the right. Basically, phase 3 is generic SBIR contracts that you get after you've developed your technology. So you'll always go through a phase 1, you'll always go through a phase 2, but then you might have a bunch of different phase 3s that result with different customers across NASA that are different uses of your particular technology. That's what phase 3 contracts are. But here's a really strong, very, very important thing about the SBIR program, and this is true for every SBIR activity across the entire U.S. government. The U.S. government wants to make sure that we are procuring everything we procure in a fair and just manner. So usually there's a competitive procurement process, meaning that we have to put out the opportunity, then we should get multiple bids in, and then we go and check all the different bids and see which one we're going to pick for whatever we're doing. So that sort of competitive process that is done in the SBIR program because we take proposals and we competitively select the proposals at the beginning. However, and this is the important part, once you have developed technology inside the SBIR, STTR programs, the U.S. government considers you the source of that technology, meaning there is no more competitive procurement from that point forward. So if you're the one who has developed some particular sensor, as long as that was done within the SBIR program, the government recognizes you as the source of that sensor, and they're no longer going to even try to find it out on the market. They know to go to you directly. That's the strongest thing about the phase 3 contracts, is that by using a phase 3 contract, the procurement person on the government side can avoid the competitive process and award directly to you. That saves several months off of any sort of procurement effort, but also it's just more likely that you're going to get hardwired right into particular programs. So it's a very strong benefit that you get from developing technologies through the SBIR and STTR program. Okay, I want to make sure we got that point across. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
Yes, 1 second.
Sure, it's easy, isn't it? Okay, so this was the website that I was mentioning. And I want to say one more time, up on top there, the third tab over up on top is the solicitations tab. That's where you click so that you can find the most recent solicitation, which is our collection of all the research questions we have. That's what you would want to search using a keyword search to see if you've got some opportunities there to talk about. Now, the last part of this is on the same page here, all the way over to the right, it says contact us. Underneath that contact button, you have the ability to contact representatives like myself from every single center. Those same research questions, which are in the solicitation, on the header of those, it will say what center is leading a particular research topic. If you then go over to the contact us section, you can find the representatives for each center and say and send an email to that person and say, hey, I'm interested in talking to someone about this particular topic, and we'll connect you with the human so we can get some dialogue going. Now that works all throughout the year except for when we have the solicitation open, which is right now January through May. So currently we can't do this, but as we get to where we're announcing making our announcements for this year and we get back into the regular swing of things, you're more than welcome to shoot emails out and establish some connections so that we can talk directly about some of these different research topics. Okay, I think I probably want to hold up there for this morning session if I could, and I'll talk a little bit more about the relevant environment testing for the afternoon session, if that's all right.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike. Last year Mike came for our conference. We hosted it in August out at the farm, and it was 100 degrees. And he said that they couldn't get travel this year, and I think it was due to some COVID stuff. But I think it's really just because you guys didn't want to come for this blizzard in the North Dakota winter.
Yeah, it sounds very appealing as I'm looking out the window at the palm trees here.
Yeah. Well, great. Hey, Mike, a couple of quick questions for you, and then we'll turn it over to the audience and then throw a question at Senator Cramer. But the number one feedback I hear when it comes to, and I'll stop sharing my screen, when it comes to SBIR programs is how difficult it is to apply and fill out all the paperwork. Any sort of suggestions on how a small business can work through that?
Absolutely, and it is a valid concern. It really is. What we hear from most companies is you got to spend around 10 to 15,000 in effort to put together a good proposal. That's what they kind of, if they put a raw dollar cost on, that's usually what we hear. There's a couple different reasons why it's tricky. The first off is, particularly if this is your first time speaking to the government, please be aware we do not speak English. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it takes a little while to get used to having dialogue with the government. Our program, one of the things we do is when you put in a proposal, if your proposal is not awarded, you will get feedback, and we'll give you specific information about what didn't work in a proposal or things that need to be worked on or whatever. That being said, another thing about these SBIR contracts is that the first one is definitely the hardest, but then the next time you put in a proposal, it's going to be maybe 60% of the work. And part of the reason is because there's a lot of entering into databases and getting different forms all done, and doing the costing is kind of tricky. But then once you've got that stuff kind of all figured out, your second proposal, your third proposal, all that can be just more about the technological meat of what you're talking about. And you don't have to really worry about all the rest of it. So it's definitely quite true that it's a significant learning curve. But once you get over that, then this tends to work out pretty well for a lot of different companies.
Awesome. And Mike, can you reinforce this stat? I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but when was the last time a North Dakota company was awarded a NASA SBIR? It was from like the 90s, I think, right?
Yeah, it's mid 90s. Yeah, I've got a chart that I didn't put up that's got all the different states and the number of proposals that came from the states, and North Dakota's got one.
So
that
is our goal to change that.
That definitely doesn't reflect what I know about the region. That's for sure.
Great. Well, one other quick question that Ray Mercedes with Carbon Space is asking is, can an Irish headquarter company with a U.S. subsidiary apply for SBIR?
As long as the company that's doing the work itself is its own U.S. company, then the work can proceed. There have been international companies that have established an American, I guess the right term would be subsidiary, but American standalone company as the U.S. government would see it, in order to do work. There's huge examples like Airbus, for example. So it's definitely, but I don't mean to imply Airbus has done an SBIR contract, but there are definitely mechanisms to where you can establish a U.S. presence in order to be enough of an American company. I think the citizenship of the owner has to deal with it a little bit as well.
Great. Well, we have a question here from Tarun in the virtual audience that I think we'll throw over to Senator Cramer, but she's asking, since there's a big chunk of international student population at UND and North Dakota State and really across all of the universities here, how would the NASA in North Dakota help in making a business idea by a non-US national work? Is there any policy that's being worked on for enabling the same to provide more jobs to the American people?
Sure, and it's a really important question because it's obviously a really important issue, and it's really a political question, right? And it requires a political response in many respects. And a lot of it gets back to what I consider a really archaic immigration policy in the United States, especially as it relates to H-1B visas and the high-tech workforce that, first of all, is in high demand in the United States of America, but where we have some really bad policies that restrict the opportunities. So one example is the fact that we have with H-1B visas, we have a per country cap, and many of you are maybe familiar with that. And what that means is it's the same percentage is applied to every country in the world, and it's capped per country. In other words, if you use all of the H-1Bs that allowed for a year for an engineering student, for example, or a medical student to come to the University of North Dakota from India, or come to the United States from India, and so they're capped, but there's several available for Ireland, since we've got somebody asking about an Irish business model or business opportunity, and it's a pretty good, by the way, illustration. We're still capped. We're still capped in India, but have availability in Ireland. I have introduced legislation the last couple of sessions with colleagues to eliminate those caps, as an example. So that provides us more entrepreneurial opportunity, international opportunity for involvement. Now, beyond that, with regard to helping an international student, this gets to the same sort of issue, and that is that we have this perverse situation in the United States where we take international students, train international students. Maybe it's a specialty in medicine that's in really high demand, and then send them back home. And if they do get a visa for working, an H-1B visa, we punish their families. We just have a lot of perverse incentives in our immigration code. So I've been working really closely with a number of people to try to correct all of that. And, you know, my right-wing friends will sometimes get mad at me. I've been beaten up on Tucker Carlson for my positions on this, which doesn't bother me a heck of a lot, just so you know. But it's easy to talk to almost anybody about the not just the generosity of that policy, or of a policy that is more skills-based, more merit-based, that attracts people and talent, and provides capital. But from a purely selfish standpoint, from a purely capitalist, selfish standpoint, it makes sense to provide more opportunity for international students to study here and to stay here and to be invested here in the United States, to improve the opportunities and quality of life for our own country, if you don't care about building bridges to other countries. And I think both are really important. So it's a sort of an inadequate answer to the question, but it's an important question that is on the forefront of at least of my mind, as we work on improving our immigration policies that make more sense. Now, the bigger political challenge to that is, of course, you have to be willing to do other things. If you're going to gain a coalition, an alliance that passes a comprehensive immigration reform, I'm all about that. I'm all about trying to find the sweet spot that allows us to improve the quality of life for Americans and people who'd like to be Americans.
Awesome, thank you, Senator. NASA crew, is there any sort of kind of stipulations when it comes to international students and from the academia side?
Certainly for licensing. Go ahead. You know what, Mike? I got a quick answer. We certainly, for licensing technologies, license to U.S. businesses. There are cases where we can license internationally. It is governed by, I think, U.S. code. I wouldn't say 404, but I may be thinking of the error I get on my webpage sometimes. I can't remember exactly, but certainly for licensing technologies, it's for U.S. businesses. It is U.S. taxpayer money, generally, for the most part. But there's always exceptions. Mike?
Yeah, on the SBIR side, I would say that the principal investigator has to be a U.S. citizen. And the one thing that I would want to point out, though, is there is a lot of international pressure for what I would call the new space industry, and by that I mean for the newer activities that are going on. I do repeatedly find a strong interest in the international entrepreneur community. I'd put it that way. And the one thing that I think is going to be very interesting to see, and I don't know if I've actually seen it yet, is when the U.S. government starts to encourage international sales from our small businesses. So particularly SBIR companies and doing NASA SBIR and STTR, for example, the companies themselves, I think, have a lot to offer as international businesses, because the technology is so highly focused within the U.S. I think you have to carefully negotiate the legalities of it, of course, but that's an area that I think is really rich for the small businesses that are mixed into the SBIR programs across the whole U.S. government. I don't know if we really pushed that hard yet. That would help. It would be a secondary sort of effect, but I think that would also help to get more international involvement that way, but as customers to our small businesses.
Awesome. We have a question here in person. Richie, you may want to speak up. I think this is the microphone over here.
Yeah. Hi, Mike. This question's for you. I'm Ruchi with Grant Farm, work as the Grants and Education Coordinator. We met last year. My question is about the number that you mentioned about North Dakota being the least number of applications that have been approved for the longest of time. I want to ask, what do you think has been the reason? Is it the complicated process of submitting an application, or is it not enough people knowing about it? Or my intention is to learn how Grant Farm can play an active role in making people aware about it, or even if it comes to like helping people submit those applications or write those grants. If you could, talk about that.
Sure. And just to be clear, I don't really have a good visibility about how many proposals have gone in over time. But at least in terms of the awards, that's the stats that we've gathered to date. There is, I would say that, like, for example, if you contrast to states that have a very strong production of SBIR, STTR contracts, there's a pretty unified mechanism in states like that where the local, state, the university, and even the local chambers of commerce are all working together to funnel new companies like this into a path that would help them, because nobody should expect that they can do this sort of stuff right out of the box. And frankly, most government contracting opportunities for a private company to start contemplating that, the first thing they need to do is actually go talk to a PTAC or a government contracting specialist. And in every region, there are organizations that'll do that. The Small Business Administration, for example, they have a website. Type in your zip code, and they will say which business coaches are near you to help you with whatever you're working on. SBIR is just like that. You sort of need to have somebody who has some experience with government contracting to help you, at least in the first iterations of your proposal. Otherwise, it's going to be a long learning curve. Also, though, I would strongly encourage looking into things like phase 0 programs. You saw I had the chart that had phase 1, 2, and 3. A phase 0 program is generally offered by the state itself. And I would say about half to a third of the states have some sort of phase 0 program. And what it's meant to do is to work with brand new entrepreneurs, people who are just putting in their first proposals. And generally speaking, a phase 0 support system will give a brand new company a chunk of money so that they can go and pay for a business consultant to help them prepare their first proposal. A lot of times these states will just have this sort of program only for the first proposal that a company is kicking in. So I don't think North Dakota has something like that, but those sorts of support systems are really what tell the difference between some regions and other regions. I think it's probably worth taking a look at some things like that.
Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. And I just want to point out that Kathy Lindquist is here with the North Dakota Procurement Technical Assistance Center. I think they're based in Fargo. So drop the website in the chat.
Excellent.
And then next, just kind of moving along here, we got one last speaker, Robert Mendina. Hopefully you can hear and see us okay. And Robert is with the Office of Small Business Programs. Can you hear us, Robert?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We cannot see you, but we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, let me go ahead and see about sharing my screen here.
And Robert, just so you know, if you do have trouble with the sharing the screen, you can send me the PowerPoint and I can present.
Can you see my screen or no?
Unfortunately, we cannot.
Okay, it looks like I'm having some difficulty sharing the screen. Okay. And who should I send it to? Is it to, because I did send it to Mike and...
Andrew, I think he sent that proposal or presentation yesterday afternoon.
Got it. I will dig it up, Mike, Robert, so you can get started here, and I will get it pulled up here in a second.
Okay. First off, I want to thank University of North Dakota and Senator Kevin Cramer for hosting this event. This is an important event to NASA and the Office of Small Business Programs. I want to send greetings from our Associate Administrator, Mr. Glenn Delgado, who wishes he could be here today, but cannot. The mission of the Office of Small Business Programs is to go ahead and
I do have your slide pulled up here, Robert, in case you can't see it. So you were good.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. It's to promote the integration of small businesses into the industrial base of contractors and subcontractors to support the future NASA missions. One of the key factors here is we want to ensure that the small business communities are having access to receive prime and subcontract awards within the agency, and that they become integrated within the agency to support the agency mission. In other words, we want small businesses that can provide the agency with solutions on how best to go ahead and support our technical programs and missions. Next slide, please. This is just an indication of what NASA did last fiscal year in awarding dollars to small businesses. As you can see, the agency awarded almost $3.5 billion to small businesses. This indicates the small business goals which the U.S. Small Business Administration assigned to NASA. As you can see, NASA achieved its small business goal, its small disadvantaged business goal, almost met our women on small business goal, but we are seeking assistance and help in awarding contracts to HubZone and service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Next chart, please. For fiscal year 22, you can see that the agency is doing well in awarding dollars to small businesses and small disadvantaged businesses. We're almost achieving our goal right now and are also almost achieving our women on small business goals. As you can see, though, the trend that we had for previous fiscal years, the awards to HubZone and service disabled veteran and small businesses are continually to be a challenge for the agency. Next chart, please. This chart presents you a trend of how NASA is awarding our prime and subcontract dollars to small businesses from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. As you can see in this particular chart, the agency has awarded almost $7.1 billion of dollars to small businesses through our prime contracts and our subcontracts to small businesses. Next chart, please. As you can see, there's been a steady growth in dollars that the agency has awarded to small businesses. From fiscal year 16 through 21, the agency has increased the amount of dollars going to small businesses by 27%, or $724 million. The dollars awarded to subcontracting, though, has increased even more dramatically by 43%, by $1.1 billion, which equates to a $1.8 billion increase to both prime and subcontract dollars. And you can see the overall increase in the NASA budget, though, has only gone up, or dollars awarded, by 35%. So the agency is making good progress in increasing the amount of participation that small businesses are in support of the agency mission by the number of dollars being awarded through our prime and subcontract. Next chart, please. This provides you a list of our top 20 our prime contractors within the agency. The reason that we would like to go ahead and show this particular chart is that many of these opportunities that we showed in the previous charts and opportunities rest with our prime contractors. As you can see, Caltech is one of our largest prime contractors that we have. They have an excellent program in their sciences in supporting the agriculture industry within this country. So they would be a contractor that I would be looking to go ahead and see about what type of opportunities that they would have. In addition to that, as you heard mentioned, we have the Boeing company, SpaceX, and many other companies in here. Next chart, please. Because we have so many of our dollars that are being awarded through our prime contracts, NASA has a program called the NASA Metropolitan program, which encourages our prime contractors to assist eligible proteges in performing NASA contracts and subcontracts. This is a great program for firms that are not used to dealing with NASA, that they would set up an arrangement with one of our prime contractors, and the prime contractors would help them assist in how to do business with NASA, try to award them subcontracting opportunities, and help them and how they go ahead and do business with NASA and writing proposals, how they would market their company's capabilities to NASA. So NASA emphasizes that companies are not that familiar with doing business with NASA to look into our NASA Metropolitan program and look to our prime contractors and try to enter into one of these agreements. Next chart, please. One of the big differences that NASA tries to encourage, or its Office of Small Business Program, is there's a difference between grants and contracts. Grants typically are a vehicle in which the government go ahead and provides funding to an organization or a university, and they go ahead and give us their best effort. Regarding to a contract, a company or the university is required to go ahead and provide a fixed product or service to the government within the specifications, the statement of work, or the performance work statement within that particular contract. So NASA is trying to move the university communities, minority serving institutions, and becoming more available to the NASA opportunities that exist within our prime contracts. So we're trying to move these universities and from our grants that the agency offers to our contracts. And that is one of the emphasis within the Office of Small Business Programs. Next chart, please. One of the vehicles that the agency uses to announce what type of opportunities are out there, and these are our broad agency announcements and NASA research announcements. These are announcements when the agency doesn't have a specific requirement, but has a general idea of area of interest that the agency would like to go ahead and conduct research in. So we would go ahead and provide a broad agency announcement saying that we're interested in studying, let's say, agriculture space research. And we'd be looking for ideas from either the small business community or the university community as far as what they would like to go ahead and propose. Typically, like I said, we do this through announcements of opportunities and NASA research announcements. And through these vehicles, typically NASA will try to award contracts to these firms to go ahead, or universities to provide and fulfill their ideas and how they can go ahead and support the agency mission. Next chart, please. In addition to this, NASA has a solicitation proposal integration service called Sbir. Where this is NASA solicits research through the release of various research announcements in a wide range of science and technology disciplines. NASA uses a peer review process to evaluate and select research proposals submitted in response to these research announcements. Researchers can help NASA achieve the national research objectives by submitting research proposals, conducting awards. And here I provide you with the link to the Sbir and how you would go ahead and submit a proposal and how your proposal would be evaluated in regards to that. Next chart. If you're interested in doing business with NASA and trying to do contracts, one of the things that we tell you to do is you have to build a relationship with that particular agency. It's just like if you're trying to have a contractor come into your house, you want to build that relationship with that company to make sure that a viable company have the capability to, and you have a good feeling with that particular one. To do business with the federal government and with NASA, the federal government has what they call small business specialists, and through our prime contractor, small business liaison officers. These would be your initial points of contact in doing business with NASA through either our prime contracts or through our subcontracts. They know the particular culture within their particular center, the particular culture within their company. They would know how and who you need to contact with your firm's capabilities to get an understanding of what they're trying to go ahead and solve and what type of research missions they are trying to go forward with. To help companies get a better idea of what NASA is doing and what our major prime contractors are doing, we hold a number of different outreach events where we try to go ahead and tell companies these are different opportunities within the agency or through our prime contractors and how best to go ahead and market your firm's capabilities to do business with NASA. Again, we're trying to build relationships and coalitions with firms and universities that are interested in doing business with NASA. And like I mentioned earlier, one of the other prime vehicles which we encourage small businesses and universities to do business with NASA is through our NASA Metropolitan program. And through this, take opportunities through subcontracting. And like Mike had said, look to the NASA SBIR and STTR program, because these are good vehicles that if you have a good idea, develop a feasibility study, and then commercialize that particular idea. And once that idea is commercialized, you can get non-competitive proposals and awards through the government or through federal agencies. Next, one of the big pushes within the agency is our program called NASA Mission Equity. And here, we're trying to make sure that NASA represents and is inclusive of all underserved communities, which includes the different small business communities, all the different social economic categories, and many minority serving institutions and tribal colleges, such as tribal colleges within North Dakota. Next. To get more information on how to do business with NASA, I would recommend that you visit NASA's Office of Small Business Programs website. Here, you'll go ahead and find out information on how to register your particular company's or university's profile through the NASA vendor database. We'll provide you a list of our active contracts list, and this active contracts list is a listing of reoccurring NASA contracts that come up for renewal every 5 years. So in a sense, these are requirements that NASA continually funds year in and year out. In addition to that, we provide you a link to the acquisition forecast, which provides you with the projected procurement opportunities that the agency is looking to fund in a particular fiscal year and the following fiscal year. So that gives you useful information on who to go ahead and contact, what the projected dollar value is, and whether the agency intends to set aside that particular requirement or not set aside that particular requirement. In addition to that, we have information on how the training opportunities that NASA conducts through our monthly small business webinars. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the NASA vendor database will be your initial point of contact as far as telling us what your company's capabilities are, what your company profile are, and we can load up your company's capability statement. This is viewed and can be viewed by any NASA employee or any of our NASA prime contractors when they're looking for capable firms or universities to go ahead and fulfill a particular NASA requirement. NASA is unique in that we are the only agency within the federal government that has an OSBP mobile app. And in this particular mobile app, we will provide you with that active contracts list that I mentioned to you. We'll also provide you with a listing and a map of where each of the 10 NASA centers are and your points of contact if you're interested in doing business with them, our small business specialists, the Small Business Administration's Procurement Center representatives, and a link to the NASA particular center's website, where it will tell you what particular mission or requirements are for that particular center. Next slide, please. Next slide after that, please. These are our upcoming outreach events and webinars which the agency is going to for. So if you're interested in doing business with NASA, I would go ahead and attend one of these outreach events that NASA is intending to go ahead and support in the future. And then each third Wednesday of the month, NASA conducts our OSBP learning series on how to do business with NASA, how to do business with our particular NASA center. And our next one is going to be on April 20th, which deals with financial management for small businesses. And we will have a representative from the SBA's SCORE office there to help businesses and what they have to do to go ahead and prepare their financial records to be a viable small business contractor. Next chart, please. As I mentioned earlier, your initial contact in doing business with NASA are our small business specialists. Here is a listing of the small business specialists that we have within the agency. As you can see on this particular chart, we break out our centers into research centers, which are Ames Research Center, Armstrong Flight Research Center, Glenn Research Center, and Langley Research Center. Then we have our space centers, which include Johnson Space Center, Kennedy Space Center, Marshall Space Flight Center, and Stennis Space Center. And then we have our Science Center, which is the Goddard Space Flight Center, and then Jet Propulsion Laboratory was included in that, but it's not a NASA center, but a federally funded research and development center. And then we have a NASA Shared Services Center, which awards contracts that are reoccurring in nature, such as financial support, human resources support, acquisition support are handled through that particular one. Now, next chart, please. This gives you a pictorial or a map of where each of the NASA small business specialists are, a picture of them and who they are. Firms that are interested in doing business with space agriculture would recommend that you would go ahead and contact our Ames Research Center that has a Earth Sciences program there that studies that. And they, particularly when they're studying that, will fly a particular ER-2 aircraft out of our Armstrong Flight Research Center to go ahead and study the effects of global climate change are or what is happening in regards to the increase melting of the polar ice cap. In addition to that, our Jet Propulsion Laboratory does many studies in earth sciences too, and what the effects of the ozone layer are to the company and what that impacts to our small business or to the agriculture base for the country. And as mentioned earlier, our Johnson Space Flight Center and Kennedy Space Center do space agriculture. So I would go ahead and contact the small business specialists at our Johnson Space Flight Center and Kennedy Space Center as well as that. And lastly, I would go ahead and contact our Goddard Space Flight Center. They also have an earth sciences program, which they are studying the impact of the what's happening globally within the climate and what the impacts are to this the Earth here. That concludes my presentation. Again, next year, if you do interested in wanting to do business with NASA, please visit our OSBP website, where you can find more information in regards to this. And happy to go ahead and take any questions at this time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robert. We're wrapping up here, but we do have one question.
Super quick question, Robert. The outreach events and webinars, are they open to everybody, and is there a cost involved in attending those?
No, they are open to anyone, and there is no cost associated with that. The only cost that one of the benefits that we've had with the pandemic is that we've been able to do a lot of these events virtually, and by doing them virtually, we made them more accessible to small businesses and universities that previously weren't able to go ahead and attend these events. And we found that they've been very successful because small businesses and universities, it's times very difficult and very expensive to go ahead and attend these outreach events when we had them in person. We're still going to be doing a blend of in-person events and virtual events here in the future. But no, to answer your question, there's no cost associated with them, and they're open to everyone to go ahead and attend.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robert. Well, I will just wrap up here, and then we'll turn it over to the center for kind of the last words. But, you know, there's really kind of a couple of goals here that we have. One, we want to really highlight how many different programs NASA has available. You know, I was really impressed with, you know, what was it, $7.5 billion or something like that, that has went to small businesses. So really want to highlight that and make it more accessible. You know, my ignorance, when I first started engaging with NASA, I had the, you know, Apollo 11 and all kind of the glossy-eyed view of NASA. And then I realized, wait, it is a government bureaucracy, and you got to know how to navigate through that. So we appreciate anybody that can help simplify and translate the government language, like you said, Mike. And then second, we really want to make more North Dakota businesses. We don't want there to just be one business that's been awarded an SBIR grant. So that is kind of my personal mission, to get that number up there. But maybe with that, we can turn it over to the senator for the last words here.
Well, Andrew, let me say first, I share exactly your view. And I think a lot of this really is a lack of awareness. And so what you all are doing at Grand Farm and UND and other participants is making more North Dakota entrepreneurs and innovators and institutions aware of the opportunities. You know, I chuckle a little bit when you talk about the bureaucracy. I also sit on the Senate Armed Services Committee. And when I think about innovation, procurement, R&D, and the barriers to entry, I would tell you NASA is like among the best of the agencies I've worked with. And partly that's because they require innovation. I mean, there's so much yet to be learned and so much yet to be discovered that you really rob yourself if you rob yourself of the opportunities to attract as many thinkers as you can into your universe. And again, the public-private partnership that is the Kennedy Space Center really is a macrocosm of the microcosm that is the Grand Sky Park at Grand Forks. So I think what you're kicking off here is really an opportunity to spread the word, and I would fully expect many more applications, both to be filled out and to be awarded as a result of this and other efforts like what you're doing. And so I applaud you, Grand Farm, for taking on that challenge. If you want to set a goal of making more people aware and get more contracts, you're doing it exactly right. I also just want to say, I'm not sure if I'm going to get to talk to you all later, but a very big thank you to Robert and Trent and to Mike for sharing this irrevocable gift of your time with us. and just want you to know how meaningful it is to me personally, and you know, to the people participating, and for those yet to learn from the folks that are attending what they missed out on as they watch the recorded video of this and sign up for next year. So thank you all. We'll look forward to talking in a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Senator. And we look forward to having everybody here in person next year with blizzard free. So
there you go.